Welcome to the 2018 Dealer Training Presentation by HearthCo. This recording was made February 28th and was current at the time it was recorded. The purpose of this particular video is to teach you which HearthCo product will work for your customer's application. It's also going to guide you in helping your customer make the best selections, but there is an accompanying sister video to this on a little flash drive which you can request if you don't already have one, and that has the product selector on it and a portable HearthCo website. That is the absolute best way to walk your customer through selections. With over 300 models to pick from, it's way too overwhelming to work through a book looking at pictures, but the product selector is designed to narrow the selections down to a small number from which your customer ends up making a choice. The real purpose here is to teach you how to do your own quotes and estimates. Little reminder that HearthCo has been an industry leader for over 20 years. We're going to cover a simple one-piece surrounds, and then we're going to talk about multi-piece surrounds, and thirdly we're going to go into custom length surrounds. Then we're going to talk a little bit about hearths and flat stock. We're going to show you how to do a quote, talk a little bit about over mantels, range hoods, and then outdoor living. The real objective here is to tell you what can and cannot be done and help you to make your own quote. We're going to begin with a simple one-piece surround. Pictured here is the little Dublin, and this rendering shows a Dublin with no hearth, and then it shows it with a flush hearth, then it shows it with a raised hearth. All of our surrounds can be installed over a flush hearth or over a raised hearth. Also, all of our products are available in both materials, gypsum and traverse stone. We're going to look at this line drawing and spec sheet. This particular spec sheet is an older version. They've all been updated recently, and the schedules A through K are now all exactly the same. A is always the same on all of the different schedules. There were some of the older ones where different letters would have different meanings. Looking at this particular drawing, I want to draw your attention to the A dimension and the C dimension. These are the most important of the two dimensions. These are the two that are going to guide all of your designs. Notice what it says in red. These are one piece. They cannot be altered. We can't stretch them and we can't shrink them. They are what they are. So, I mentioned the C dimension and the A dimension. There are only two questions that you need an answer to decide whether or not you have a product that can work for your customer's application. So the first thing we're going to look at is that C dimension. And we want to find out if there's room for it. Putting a surround around a fireplace is like framing a picture. As long as the frame is larger than the picture, and as long as the frame will fit on the wall, then it's going to work. We fill around the inside up to the firebox. In a picture, we would use matting. In the case of the surround, we're going to use flat stock, and we're going to cut it into strips and use it as filler, which we'll go into. So the first question is, will the frame fit on the wall? So you're not going to ask just the total length, because sometimes there is a cabinet or a window that cuts the one side down. Like let's say the right hand side only has 13 inches clearance. That dictates the total length because you can't off-center the surround. The surround is going to be centered over the firebox. So if you only have 13 inches on one side, you only have 13 inches on both sides. It doesn't matter if you have 10 feet on one side, because you can't slide it over and have it be crooked. You can't have it be offset in the opening. So most of the time, I would say 70 or 80% of the time, you're going to have an open wall. That's what you're wanting to find out. If there are no restrictions on the C dimension and you can have the C dimension be as long as you want, that's what you're looking for. After you know that, the second question is the question that nobody seems to have the answer to. They'll tell you, oh, it's a 42-inch fireplace. Well, that really doesn't mean much. The 42 inches can include 6 inches of sheet metal. It can include side vents. It cannot include the side vents and so forth. What you need to know is the width of the opening of the firebox. A 42-inch fireplace may have a 42-inch viewing area, but it may only be 39 inches. It may have a 36-inch viewing area, some decremental iron on the outside, or some side vents. So we call this the uncoverable area. Once you know what you cannot cover up, and you know that you have an open wall, it's easy to make a selection from there. So let's suppose that you ask them what their non-coverable dimension is. If you hear a dimension larger than 43 inches, you want to question it. Up until the last couple of years when they started making linears, almost all fireplaces were 42 inches or less. As a result, all of our early designs were designed for a 36 or a 42-inch fireplace. For a 36, you could get a 3-38 and have an inch on each side of clearance. The 3 means it's 3-sided. The 38 would be the A dimension. The reason the A dimension is part of the part number is it's the critical dimension. You cannot let the legs cover up part of the opening. And that's what this is all about. If your opening is 46 inches wide, you know right away that you've eliminated 80% of the designs. None of the 343s, none of the 338s are going to work. You're going to have to go to something larger, and you're going to have to look at the custom length. Especially when you get into linears, you're going to be looking at the custom length. Okay. The one thing also that this slide is pointing out to you is the far right, the minimum hearth size. You can make the hearth as long as you want, but you don't want it to be so short that part of the legs stick over the edges. Generally, you're going to want the C dimension, the length of the cap, to be the same as the hearth, or the hearth can be longer. So if it's a 60-inch cap, you can use a 60 or a 66-inch hearth or a 71. You can make it 20 feet long and use hearth tiles, but you don't want to make it less than enough for the legs to fit on. So if it's a 60-inch cap, you want to try to stay with a 60-inch hearth or longer. You could probably get away with a 56, but you could not get away with a 51. Filler, flat stock. I mentioned framing a picture. You put matting around the picture to fill out to the frame. Well, with a surround, we use flat stock. We cut it into strips and glue those strips around the edges and the top and the bottom. Then we caulk them in, and it looks totally built in. Our suggestion is you never try to get more than 2 cuts out of a single piece. We have moved away from 3/4 inch flat stock and moved to 1 inch. There's a couple of reasons for that. It ships better, it's much stronger, it does not crack as easily, and it's the same price. We don't charge more for it. But now we can make it in a 72-inch length. And when you get into some of the custom lengths, you're going to find that 48 inches was not long enough, and we couldn't make the 3/4 inch any longer than 48 without having a lot of breakage. So it's 1 inch thick, and it can be ordered either 48 or 72. The widths available are 6, 12, 18, and 24. Now, what we recommend is that you don't try to get more than 2 cuts out of a piece. So let's say that you need three 5-inch pieces. You could order three sixes, you could order one 12 and one 6, or you could order an 18. If you order an 18 and try to get all three cuts out of one piece, the center piece will have two cuts that you made, no factory edge. It would be better to order three sixes or a 6 and a 12 so that you don't get more than two pieces out of a particular piece of factory flat stock. You don't save much. The difference in 112 and two sixes of gypsum is about $1. So down at the bottom, we talk a little bit about how to figure that. So if you had a 43-inch A dimension on your surround, and the firebox was 39 inches, that's a difference of 4 inches. So you're going to need 2 inches of trim on each side. So you get one piece of 6-inch flat stock, and that will handle the two 2-inch pieces that you need. Forgive the lousy artwork here. I'm certainly no artist, but you get the picture. Here's a Hermosa. Note the Hermosa's one piece. It cannot be changed. So what you're looking at, you see a firebox in the middle, and you can see the area around it that's going to get the flat stock filler. One quick little thing here, you see the complicated design at the top. There are two ways to fill in around the firebox. You can cut the flat stock, you can lay the surround on the flat stock, draw a tracer line and cut it to those lines, follow that detail and butt it right up to the edge of the legs and the cap and the lintel. But if it's complicated like this one and you're not sure that you can cut that intricate piece, as an alternative, you can use an angle grinder, and you can angle grind an inch off of the inside edge of the legs and the lintel so that you can cut a rectangular piece that will slide right in behind it. And it won't necessarily have to have that fancy design in it. It just will tuck right in behind the legs or the lintel, and then you caulk that joint where it comes together. They'll look identical. So you decide which is easier, to cut the flat stock or to grind the leg. Okay, now here's another lousy drawing of mine, but you get the picture. This won't work. You cannot cover up the opening. Here's why that's so important. Yeah, if it's an electric fireplace, you can get away with it. You can cover up a little bit. You're reducing the viewing area, which may make your customer unhappy, but that would probably not be too bad. A gas fireplace becomes marginal, and with a wood stove or wood burning, it's totally unacceptable. The fumes from the gas or from the wood burning can get behind the surround if the legs stick over the box. Then that leaches out into the room. It's not the kind of installation I would want to be responsible for, and we absolutely don't recommend that you cover up part of the opening. Some people will overlap the opening a little bit, quarter inch or a half inch, and then they'll caulk in real good around there, around the back. But I just think it's a bad practice. I'll leave that up to you. But I definitely would not want to overlap the opening on a wood burning. Now, you can refer back to this later. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you want to figure out how much filler it needs. You have an example for the sides, which I already went over with you, 43 inches with an opening of 36. You subtract, you get 7 inches. You're going to need two pieces that are 3.5 on each side. Top and bottom, you cut the legs to get the length you want, for the height that you want, and that may create a gap at the top or the bottom. So you simply figure out how far it is up off the floor. If it's 5 inches off the floor, you're going to need a 5-inch strip. If the distance from the top of the firebox to the bottom of the lintel is 3 inches, you're going to need a 3-inch strip. One thing on this that I recommend, I'm quite different than a lot of other people when it comes to this. A lot of people start with the flat stock. I don't personally believe in that. They worry about a balanced look, as they call it, and they want the filler to be the same all the way around, or they want it to be greater at the top than the sides. To me, the filler is the last thing you think of. Filler and large pieces at the top with smaller pieces on the sides is left that's left over from separation from combustibles when it was wood and tile. They would have more tile at the top because it had to be further from the fireplace at the top than it did at the sides. Here's how I do it. I go into the home, I pick the shortest person in the house or the person who's going to clean the mantle, who's going to clean the top, and I ask them to put their hand on the wall and show me where they want the fireplace or the surround to come to. This gives me a height. I measure that. Now I know the height that I want it installed. I know how much to cut off of the legs, and then I figure the filler. The filler is not a place where I begin, but that's a personal preference. Every once in a while, you're going to need it taller than the legs can provide. We can provide you with extended plinth blocks for greater height. All you have to do is order an extended plinth block and tell us the make and model of the surround that you're working with, and we'll supply you with an extended plinth block and give you instructions. Sometimes you cut the plinth block off that's on there and replace it with a longer one. Other times you add the two together. It'll depend on which model you're using. Okay, so as a wrap up, what we learned is that a lot of fireplaces are like 36 inches, and those 3-38s are designed for things that are 36 inches and smaller. The 43 inches is designed for 40 to 42 inch fireboxes, and if it's larger than that, we're going to be going to custom length. So the one piece are all 43 inches or smaller. I believe there's one that's a 45. Maybe the Pacifica or the Dublin has a 3-45. So what if the customer has a 34-inch wide opening, but they really like the look of a Dublin 343? They want the depth of the shelf, the length that it has, and they like that look. Will that work? Of course it will work. As long as the picture frame is bigger than the picture, it's going to work, isn't it? Assuming you have room on the wall, that it will fit on the wall. It can be bigger but not smaller. And then how do you figure the flat stock? Well, you subtract the 34 from the 43, you get 9 inches. You're going to need 4.5 inches on either side, and then you figure the top and the bottom. Terminology. A lot of people use a lot of different terminology for things. We're trying to teach you the HearthCo terminology so we can all speak the same language. Starting at the very bottom, on a raised hearth, the piece that goes from the floor to the bottom of the hearth is called a riser. Typically, that is can be a one-piece raised hearth where it's all one piece with the top section, or it can be flat stock that's used to butt up to hearth tiles on a wooden frame. The next piece is a flush hearth, and they vary in thickness from 1 to 2.25 inches. Actually, with some of the square ones, we go up to as much as 3 inches. Okay, so the next thing then is the hearth. That's the flat thing that goes on top of the riser, or it might sit directly on the floor. Then we get to the legs. Some people will call the legs columns. We call them legs. The very first section of the leg is the plinth block. Sometimes the plinth block is attached to the leg, sometimes it's a separate piece. In all cases, all of our models are designed for you to be able to cut some part of the leg or the plinth block. If it has a real long plinth block and it's a one piece, it's designed for you to cut the plinth block. But if it has a short plinth block and the leg is not attached, you'll cut the bottom of the leg. If the leg is attached, it won't be attached at the top. The top section is called the capital. The capital is that design section at the top of the leg that looks like the plinth block. It isn't labeled on this particular drawing, so that'll be an extra little piece of information that you have. All of our designs are designed so that you can cut some of the height out without affecting the design. So you'll never be cutting the capital. You may have the capital as a separate piece, or the plinth block might be a separate piece, but however it's designed, there will be something you can cut without affecting the design. Then you see the filler around the inside. Those are those strips of flat stock that we were talking about. And next you have the lintel, and some people call that a breastplate. We call it the lintel. And above the lintel is the cap. We use the words cap, mantel, and shelf interchangeably. So above the cap and above the lintel, the cap, the lintel, the legs make up what we call the surround. A surround can be three-sided with no cap. It can be three-sided with no lintel, or it can be three-sided with a cap and a lintel. The surround does not necessarily have a cap. We use the word mantel or full mantel interchangeably with a full surround and a cap on top of it, meaning a three-sided mantel with a cap. Everything above that is the overmantel. The overmantel has the flat area which is called cladding. That cladding is nothing but 12-inch flat stock with some vertical grout lines cut in during installation. They just set the saw depth to about 1/4 of an inch, and they cut the vertical lines in, fill them with grout, and it has the effect of looking like individual sections of stone. The area that this drawing calls molding, we call trim. And that you'd be looking at on this particular drawing, either the Corsica trim or the Santa Barbara trim. It's applied on top of the flat stock cladding, and it makes an external design. There's no magic to building an overmantel. It can be anything you dream up, but generally it has flat stock for a background, and then it has some kind of a design, and then it may or may not have a cap on top of that. So you see finally at the top, the last thing is that upper cap. Now we're going to be looking at multi-piece surrounds. Even though these are multiple pieces, they're really no more flexible than a one piece. They are what they are. They're a fixed length. And you have a little bit of flexibility because you could put the legs in a little bit or you could move them. But I mean, we're talking 1/4 of an inch, not very much. The legs go where the legs go. The one we're looking at here is the bishop. You see it has a cap and a lintel. It has capitals, and it has legs, and it has plinth blocks. The line drawings or the spec sheets on all of these have a little yellow line right where the pieces come together. So they would show you whether the plinth blocks were separate or attached, whether the capital was separate or attached, and whether the lintel and the cap are one piece or if they're separate pieces. So that where the parts break, you can see on the spec sheet, and it's a yellow line where they intersect. So why multi-piece? Pretty simple, actually. They got so heavy as one piece that it was to reduce the weight. It allows them to ship much better. They even ship at a different rate. They're a class 70 instead of a class 100, so it's less expensive to ship anything that's what they call knockdown. So there was a little more flexibility, and we have this year come out with a lot more flexibility through the interchangeables. We have mixed and matched all the various different leg sets we could with as many different cap and lintels as we could, and we've come up with over 100 new models just by using the parts we already had. So there is quite a bit of interchangeability there, and you'll see that when you see the new interchangeable designs. Keep in mind they're all subject to the same size limitations as the one piece. They can't be stretched or shrunk. We can't make it just a little bit longer or just a little bit shorter. Think of it as a jello mold. You know, you have a mold and you fill it full of jello, and when it hardens, you've got a little jello mold full of, take it out, you got a little jello star. Well, you can't make the star a little bigger or a little smaller. The mold is what the mold is. Now, custom link surrounds. All right, a custom link surround, at some point, we started having a need for longer solutions. The linears came out and we needed to go beyond 43 inches. People wanted quite long surrounds. They wanted, for a variety of reasons, to be able to get them in a custom size. To the best of my knowledge, we're the only company that is able to deliver custom length surrounds where the cap can be ordered 86 and a half inches, and that gives them the exact A dimension they want, the C dimension they want, and works perfectly for the area that they have to choose from. The way we do that is we are able to adjust the mold. Now, we can't make it taller or deeper or not so deep, or we can't put a curlicue in it, we can't make it round, but we can make it to custom length. And that's the most important thing. So when it says 290, that means it can go up to 90 inches long. That means you can order it 86 and a half, 74, 82, anything you want up to 90 inches. There's no change in price to order the custom length. So here's a real nice drawing that shows a lot of things. First thing you see, it says adjustable 90-inch max. We're trying to get rid of the term adjustable altogether. The customers had the feeling they could adjust it after they got it, and that doesn't work that way. It's the mold that is adjustable. It's actually a custom length. They can order it in custom lengths because we can adjust the mold. So there's a lot of things on this picture that I want to show you. To start at the top, the C dimension can be ordered at any length that you want. Now remember, I said there's a relationship between the A and the C. It's very simple to figure one from the other. People make it too complicated. They think they need to know the amount of taper and the width of the leg and all kinds of things. In a minute, I'm going to show you that that's not true. All you need to know is the relationship between these two, because when one changes by an inch, the other changes by an inch. So if it's 90 inches long and you make it 89 inches long, the legs scoot together 1 inch. So instead of 61 and a half inches, they're going to be 60 and a half. You don't have to figure anything. All you have to be able to do is say, I'm going to subtract so many inches from the top. That'll subtract so many inches from the middle, because those legs are going to scoot together. But look at all the things you can see on this drawing. It's pretty nice. You see the cap, then you see the lintel. Now the lintel in this particular one has an inlay tray. When you order one of the surrounds with an inlay tray, it includes your choice of the fillers that you can put in there. So you can get any of the 6-inch inlays with the Castella. The Castella itself as an individual named product has gone away. It still exists, but it's one of the Goleta interchangeables. You can get that Goleta top, which is what the Castella is. The Castella is a Goleta with Castella legs. So now you can order that Goleta top with a variety. There's 16, I believe it is, different sets of legs you can get with the Goleta. And they don't have names anymore. It's the Goleta series with an L120 leg or an L200 or whatever it might be. But one of those leg choices would be that Castella leg. So now your Castella leg, it shows you at the top that fancy little capital. And if you look to the right, you can pretty much see in the line drawing that capital is not, there's no break point there. It's not a separate piece. So that means the break point must be at the bottom, and that plinth block must be a separate piece. Another way you can tell, the plinth block is not very tall. And remember, we wouldn't want you to change the design. So if you cut some of that plinth block off, you'd ruin the design. So that's how you know that the plinth block is a separate piece from the leg, and you're going to cut the leg off to get the height that you want. And there's pictures of your fillers in there. So all in all, this is a good slide. All right. Now this explains what I just touched on. Let's suppose that you didn't want the cap to be 90 inches long. One thing I want to tell you about anything over 86 inches, and this is important, lift gates on the delivery trucks are only 85 to 86 inches. So when you exceed 85 inches, you better be there with a forklift to unload the truck, because they can't get it on the lift gate. They put it in lengthwise and they can't unload it with a lift gate. You have to have a forklift to unload anything, figure anything above 85 to be safe. So let's say that you want your cap to be 80 inches long and you want to know how far apart the legs would be. Well, if you look at the drawing, if the cap is 90 inches, the legs are 61 and a half. So you're going to make it 10 inches shorter. So you're going to make it 80, okay? So the legs are going to be 10 inches closer together. You subtract 10 from 61 and a half, you get 51 and a half. The bottom dimension works it the other way around. Let's suppose that you don't know how long you want the cap, but you know you want the legs to be 48 and a half inches apart, okay? You subtract 48 and a half from 61 and a half, you get 13 inches. So that means you need to order the cap 13 inches shorter. So if you want the legs to be 48 and a half inches apart, you want a 77-inch cap. Always supply one dimension or the other, and it's safest to supply the cap length. If you say, I want the Costella or the Goleta L100 or whatever it is, and I want it to be 77 inches, you can know that the legs will be 48 and a half apart. Okay. These are semi-custom solutions. They're not custom. So what's the difference between custom and custom length? Custom length is we can change the length, but can we change the design a little bit? Could we put an arch in it? And the answer in almost every case is we cannot. So you need to know that if they want something that's truly to match a picture or truly custom, we have over 300 models to pick from. If there's nothing in there that works for them, they probably need to go to a custom shop. All right, new for 2018 are the interchangeables. This is a little breakout drawing to show you all of the component parts that you just saw, the one you were looking at. And you can see that with these individual components, it would be possible to put different legs underneath the same cap and come up with a new design. And that's exactly what we've done. The other video goes into more detail about this. But what we've done basically is take some legs that weren't very deep, maybe 3 inches or 6 inches deep, and we've added a backer. And the backer is formerly the plateau leg, and we put the plateau leg behind the design leg, and usually we make it a little wider so it's a two-step leg. Looks very nice, and we were able to come up with over 100 different designs that we added to the catalogs. I say catalog, but it's a digital catalog. It's the new product selector that you're going to want to see. Okay, so on this particular drawing, the only thing I wanted to point out, notice in the center of the inlay, there's that little diamond-shaped piece and it has the fleur-de-lis on it. That's called a keystone piece. And we have the bullnose flatstock has a keystone piece. The inlays can have a keystone piece. That's just to acquaint you with that particular little item. The inlays, you can get any of the inlays. You can get the totally smooth, you can get the keystone, you can get the keystone with or without the fleur de lis, the grapevine, the arabesque, or the leaf, or you can have the tray empty. They may want to put, who knows, maybe they want to put ceramic tile in there or a picture of grandma. Unusual solutions. Okay, I'm trying to show you here things that right away should bring up a red flag. This is one particular customer install where they wanted to put a Del Rey, and they thought just because it was custom length that it would fit. The problem is there's no possible way. The side walls were only about 8 inches. They weren't even wide enough for the Del Rey legs. Not only that, there's always a taper, so the cap and lintel would actually stick off to the sides. There was no possible way that this could work. The other thing that's a problem with this particular installation, see the recessed area? That's a heat trap. That violates most codes and becomes very problematic. And just because our stuff is non-combustible doesn't mean we solve that problem. Even though you fill all that interior with flat stock, your separation from combustibles in a recessed area can still be a problem. All right. So what about this? Could a Del Rey have been used? Well, not without making it with skinny legs. I mean, it's craziness to even try here. There are some things that you could do, but unless they want to rebuild the wall to make it big enough, this is your question number one, okay? Will the wall hold the frame? If the wall won't hold the frame, you have to switch to a different model. Now, there are some things that would work. In this case, the Del Rey cap was 15 inches. There's only 13 inches and so forth. So they could fur out the wall and they could do all these kinds of things. But it would be uh, it would be a mistake to try to put the Del Rey on this, even though it's really what the customer wanted. Okay, so if they don't want to change the wall, they don't want to rebuild everything, um, do we have anything that would work? What if those sidewalls are only 7 inches? Do we have anything that they could use? The answer is we do. One of the things you can use, there are various trims we have. The Santa Barbara and the Corsica trim are good examples of things that you can use when you don't have enough width. The other thing is we have two new leg sets now, both the Mesa and the Plateau, that are available with a 6-inch leg. So there are some things you can do that will solve uh, that problem. Another thing you might want to consider is some of the Metroscape designs. A lot of these come straight down from the cap, so they don't have that flare. You don't have that to deal with, and they're available in a variety of sizes. So if the customer is amenable to working with one of the Metroscapes, this slide shows it calls it a Phoenix. It was renamed. It is the Plateau, but there are several of those. Okay, so the wrap up. Being able to order your surrounds in custom lengths is a feature unique to HearthCo as far as we know. HearthCo is pursuing a patent on this particular method of manufacturing, um, and mostly it's available on the larger uh, surrounds. Okay, so that wraps up the custom link surrounds. Now we're going to be looking at doing some quotes. So it says, note the subtotal includes all of the parts necessary, including the allowance for the inlay. What it's talking about If you look down at the schedule section, you see the various different parts. Notice where it says subtotal 1425. All you need to quote your customer is if they want a San Carlos complete with inlay and legs and cap, lintel, plinth blocks, you don't have to worry about the parts. It's $1,425 and they get to pick their inlay. If they want it in Traverse Stone, it's $2,280. Very simple to quote. We're getting away from listing all these parts. The 2018 MSRP is 36 pages instead of 146. And there's no line drawings on it. It's just a list of the prices. The parts aren't all spelled out. And there are several parts to a page. And they're organized to match the website. So hopefully you'll find that a lot easier to use. And if you did nothing but charge them for the surround and the hearth and threw in a 12-inch piece of flat stock on every order, you would probably be pretty close. And sometimes you'll find you wouldn't need flat stock. Sometimes you might need two pieces. But overall, that would be a very simple way to do a quick quote. Okay, now here's an example of one that has multiple different leg sizes. The Mesa is available. Now I mentioned that the Mesa now has a 6-inch leg as well. You notice that the subtotal doesn't anticipate that you'll order all those leg sets. It assumes that you will pick one of those leg sets. So the 761 price is any set of legs in conjunction with the cap. And the new interchangeables work the same way. Basically, when you order the Goleta interchangeable and you pick a leg set, you're going to have one price and it's going to include everything. Same way if you order a Pinnacle and so forth. So here's what your quote might look like. You have a Mesa 71. By the way, we have discontinued the Mesa 71. It's one of our oldest models, but we no longer need it. The mold went bad. And as a result, you can get a 71-inch Mesa. You just use the Mesa adjustable. And this has Mesa 10-inch legs. So you could use the Mesa adjustable and you use the 10-inch legs. And then this is a hearth to go with it and a couple of pieces of flat stock. And there's your quote. It's really that simple. The other thing that I would tell you is anything that is custom length, any of the molds that are adjustable, will have no grout lines. Grout lines are limited to the fixed length where the factory knows how long it's going to be and they know where to put the grout lines. When it's flexible or adjustable like that, we have no idea where the grout lines would appear. So there are no grout lines in those molds. Okay, we've talked a little bit about hearths. Now we're going to go into them in more detail. 2-inch flush hearth, looks like the one you see here. They're the same price as a 1-inch. It's basically the same cost to us to make a 1-inch as a 2-inch. Normally the 2-inch is much more popular. Once in a while we'll sell a 1-inch for someone who wants to embed it in a wood floor, or if they have not allowed enough room to put a 2-inch underneath, they've installed the firebox flat on the floor and there's no room, they'll put a 1-inch. Sometimes in apartments or condos they'll 1-inch, but the 2-inch is much more popular. And when it exceeds 71 inches, it becomes 2 1/4, and that's for strength. You cannot get a 1-inch longer than 71. So here's your flush hearth, and I was just telling you when people prefer that. Although I don't make the mistake, which I have made in the past, of telling people that the 2-inch looks better. Looks are in the eyes of the beholder. And so if they like the 1-inch, then I guess that's what looks the best. We sell a lot more of the 2-inch. Okay, these are great. These are single piece. It's the 16-inch raised hearth. So they're 16 inches tall, and they come in various lengths. These are fixed length. Now you can, when you do the install, you can cut them down and make them shorter. You can cut the depth and make them less deep if you want. You just use a circular saw with a masonry blade, and all the product cuts very easily with a circular, any kind of saw that has a circular blade. Tile saw, you could use a table saw if you put a masonry blade in it. And and you can cut curved cuts in them to make grout lines, or you can cut products to length. You only have about an inch of material because everything is hollow. You only have about an inch of material to cut through. This we used to call a decorative raised hearth. It doesn't serve a functional purpose like catching sparks, but it looks great in an apartment building or something where they don't want just to have flat stock going down to the floor. They want something to fill in that space. We use a little 8-inch raised hearth. You can also get flush hearth tiles, which look just like the flush hearth, and they sit flat on the floor, and you would use those if you want to exceed the length that you could do with a flush hearth. Maybe somebody wants to do a whole 10-foot wall. You use the tiles to do that. So here's a picture of someone that built a raised hearth and used hearth tiles to cap it with. You can put raised hearth. You can use hearth tiles on top of a wooden box and use flat stock for the risers, and make a raised hearth that way. You can also use bullnose hearth tiles on the top. You can also use a flush hearth one piece for the top. You can also get the one piece pre-made precast raised hearth. A lot of different options on the hearths. So here's the bullnose. Notice the difference in the look. The bullnose sticks over the edge, and these will not install flat on the floor. They have to go on some kind of a frame. So they sit on a wooden box, and then the riser panels that go vertically up to the bottom of that are nothing but flat stock, and then they're either cut into sections that are right length, or they can cut grout lines in them if you want to make the lines a little closer together. So there's your wrap up. Mostly we sell 2-inch hearths. Note that you can get the custom length. When you get the custom length, you can get them up to 24 inches deep, and there'll be no grout lines. Overmantels. It's interesting. Anything can be an overmantel. You could put a Pacifica over a Pacifica, or a Dublin over a Goleta, and you can use Santa Barbara or Corsica trim to make designs. Generally, they have cladding for flat stock, but they could literally just make a frame. Some of ours show with just a frame. Here's a typical one, and it shows the flat stock, and then it shows the Corsica trim making the design in the middle, has a cap on the top. One of the things that's kind of nice to do is use plateau trim around the outside of the design that's made by the Corsica, and then use flat stock on the inside. That makes the inside recessed because the flat stock is only 1 inch thick and the plateau trim is 3 inches thick. So you have a nice 2-inch recess in the center. So anything you place over a mantle could be an overmantel. Lots of different ways to design those, and anything your customer likes that you can make with the parts. Typically you're going to use flat stock for cladding, you're going to use trim for design, and you may or may not put a cap on it. Range hoods. Okay, this explains the two different types of range hoods that we have. One is the Sonoma, the other is the San Jose. The San Jose, the chase on the San Jose, the part above the range that goes up to the ceiling, is a one-piece precast chase. The San Jose is very fixed dimensions. Most of the requests I get, they want it smaller, and they ask if they can get it smaller. For $500, they can make a custom San Jose to the dimensions that the customer wants. But the standard San Jose comes in the dimensions that are shown in the spec sheet. The Sonoma is exactly the opposite. The Sonoma is a collection of components that they put together. They could pick any corbels that they want. They could pick any of the inlays that they want. So it includes 2 corbels. It includes the inlay. inlay tray that goes around it. It includes a lot of flat stock that they trim, fill in underneath, and all the components necessary to build the Sonoma. It does not include the chase. In fact, you see in the picture, one of those chases is made out of copper. All right, so range hoods, pre-made versus kit. Outdoor living products. Not all of our dealers sell outdoor living products, but some do. And for those, um, we have a new line that we're developing now. It'll be that it probably released second or third quarter in 2018. And in the meantime, you can use your 2016 price list, and we have the models that you're familiar with. This is the Mount Lassen. Um, it's the round one. The Mount Shasta is the square version. The Aleutian Islands is the rectangle. They're all available in a variety of different finishes. These come in a couple of different heights. And you always want to specify whether it's a natural gas burner or an LP gas burner. Here's the Aleutian Islands. Notice that finish. That's a black onyx stain with a clear gloss finish over the top of it. The current pricing on that finish retail is $250 for the stain, $250 for the clear coat, so it's $500, and your dealer multiplier is 0.50. So your cost for that finish is $250. It can go on any of the outdoor living products. The Aleutian Islands is also available in all the regular colors and the regular Traverse Stone. We can do the Piatto finish, which is this totally smooth finish for the outdoor living products and for the Metroscape items only. We could do the Tivoli, which is the very rough finish in everything. But the Piatto, which is the very smooth finish, is only available for the items that don't have a lot of detail. We can't do a traditional mantle with all the detail and do it in the Piatto finish. So the Piatto finish is for Metroscapes and outdoor living. And the Piatto is the very smooth finish. The Tivoli is the sandblasted, very rough finish. So outdoor living, pretty plug and play. You can watch for new products. And as soon as we get our new offerings out, you'll be the first to know. All right. Here's the summary of the training. Basically, you can reach me 7 days a week up until 7 p.m. I'm here to help you. Of course, you can call the office 530-622-3877. And to the extent that they're able to help you with billing and things like that, that's great. But if you really want to get attention, you want to speak to somebody and get through to somebody, get a quick answer, and maybe a more complicated question, or you have trouble getting response on something, call me first, 928-595-2317. That's 7 days a week. I don't care if you call me on Sunday at 6 o'clock at night. I'll answer the phone. 7 o'clock AZ time, Arizona time, and that's when I'm available. The flash drive that you receive after watching this presentation includes this video, and it includes the new video on the product selector and on the portable website. Thank you so much for attending.